I think we've got further proof now that the alphabets really did get our foreign allies to spy on the Trump campaign.
See,
So
you feel
there's
bad
proof
about derailing me from my original first story here.
so there's proof of treason. Well, this is back to Russia. There's proof
Yeah.
of treason within our own government.
So this right
Are you
here, the CIA and foreign intelligence agencies illegally targeted over 26 Trump associates before the 2016 Russia collusion report. Before it all took place. Not only that, it says over here in the article, the United States intelligence community asked foreign spy agencies to surveil 26 associates of Donald Trump in the run-up to the 2016 election, which then triggered the allegations that the former president's campaign had been colluding with Russia, according to the report. The former CIA directive John Brennan identified and presented the targets to the U.S. intelligence sharing partners and the so-called Five Eyes agencies, the intelligence gathering organizations in the US, United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, according to a report published Monday. So, just to make this clear, it is illegal for the United States to spy on a United States citizen without, going through the due process. It's not illegal for them to go over to the UK, over to Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and say, hey, why don't you spy on our citizen and just report back to us? And we've actually done this before in the past. There was a report back in 2018 about how the United States was actually spying on some Australian citizens at one point because they thought they had ties to some like terrorist organizations. So we also actually do this to their citizens as well. Now, that should be completely illegal beyond, I mean, it is completely illegal to do, but it's their loophole they find around it. So they had them spy on Trump for them, already violating, his due process rights. And then them spying on him is what then triggered the Russia collusion hoax, because they then looked at them and said, hey, look, other countries are looking into Trump for, bad reasons. So there must be some credibility to this, even though they were the ones who told them to spy on Trump in the first place. I mean, you want to talk about major, they like to say that, well, there was no, we never had any issues under Obama. Obama never had any controversies. For one, he had plenty. But this has to be, I think, probably the biggest. This is far worse than anything that took place on January 6th. Far
was
worse than
are
anything
you
that took
saying
place
are
on
you saying
January
there was
6th.
something other than a brown suit or a tan suit?
Well, it's funny because I even have it pulled up over here. I think it was, no, let's not forget, this isn't the first time he's targeted Republicans illegally. The IRS did have to actually settle with conservative groups when they were targeting, when the IRS was actually targeting conservative organizations under Obama as well.
Boy, that sounds like something you would expect KGB Putin to maybe do. Ironic, isn't it?
Well, I mean, let's face it, Obama was, and we've had multiple people who I would call tyrants, but Obama was one. He imprisoned multiple journalists without due process. He killed American citizens in countries that we weren't at war with without following through any due process. And again, I will perfectly admit, those citizens looked like they had ties to ISIS. The issue is, though, those citizens were not in Afghanistan and were not in Iraq and were not in direct communication with them at the time. Instead, we blew them up while they were at a diner in Yemen, a country that we never had authorization to go to war with. So, as far as I'm concerned, it was an assassination of an American citizen by a sitting president, and we just swept it under the rug. We also had him, of course, funneling guns to cartel members across the border with the Fast and Furious scandal. I think they chose that name on purpose because it would make people laugh. But those guns were then, of course, used to kill American citizens. So, I mean, there's multiple things we could keep going with. Of course, the whole thing in Benghazi as well. I mean, there's so many things
Funneling
we could
cash
point to.
funneling cash to our enemies in Iran.
Selling uranium to both Russia and Iran. I mean,
So keeping this on our Russia theme, I did think it was kind of interesting of Putin pointing out that they wouldn't blow up their own pipeline.
oh yeah. Well, also it was a pretty funny moment in the interview because there was that pipeline that was channeling oil over to I forget where directly it was going. Was it to France or one of them?
Germany.
Germany. So it was the oil coming out of Russia going to Germany. And what do you know? It happened to someone blew it up. And the media reported it was Russia, which makes no sense because that was a huge amount of their income. Why would you that if anything would have been a great method for Russia to use as leverage in any sort of discussions, because they could simply say, hey, we could turn off that oil. So it makes no sense that Russia would ever blow up the pipeline. Not only that, but there was American ships in the area as well as UK ships in the area, and we know for a fact that Boris Johnson stopped a peace treaty with Ukraine and I think it was Boris Johnson. We know for a fact it was England who stopped a peace treaty between Ukraine and Russia earlier on in the war. So we know they do not want the war to end, and we know their ships were there around the time the pipeline blew up. So the funny part about it, though, was Tucker Carlson, of course, asking Putin about, well, who do you think did it? And Putin goes, well, you. And Tucker Carlson just looks at him and goes, I wasn't there that day. And even Putin, of course, got to go laugh at it and say, no, CIA, your government and all that stuff. Which is the only thing that makes any bit of sense. And anyone who even remotely argues Russia blew up their own source of income is absolutely just full of it. It makes no sense whatsoever.
See, that's some of that 4D chess that they accuse Trump of playing.
Listen, I think Putin is a very smart man. I don't think he would go that far with it, though. I think he would just turn off the oil and say, prepare to have a very cold winter.